How to handle exceptions in a list comprehensions. I have some list comprehension in Python in which each iteration can throw an exception. For instance, if I have, I'll get a zero division error exception in the third element. How can I handle this exception and continue execution of the list comprehension? The only way I can think of is to use a helper function. But this looks a bit cumbersome to me. Is there a better way to do this in Python? Note, this is a simple example, see for instance above, that I contrived because my real example requires some context. I'm not interested in avoiding divide by zero errors but in handling exceptions in a list comprehension.
There is no built-in expression in Python that lets you ignore an exception, or return alternate values in C in case of exceptions, so it's impossible, literally speaking, to handle exceptions in a list comprehension because a list comprehension is an expression containing other expression, nothing more, i.e., no statements, and only statements can catch/ignore/handle exceptions. Function calls are expression, and the function bodies can include all the statements you want. So delegating the evaluation of the exception-prone subexpression to a function, as you've noticed, is one feasible workaround. Others, when feasible, are checks on values that might provoke exceptions, as also suggested in other answers. The correct responses to the question how to handle exceptions in a list comprehension are all expressing part of all of this truth. 1. Literally, i.e. lexically in the comprehension itself, you can't. 2. Practically, you delegate the job to a function or check for error-prone values when that's feasible. Your repeated claim that this is not an answer is thus unfounded.
I realize this question is quite old, but you can also create a general function to make this kind of thing easier. Then, in your comprehension, you can of course make the default handle function whatever you want, say you'd rather return none by default. Note, in Python 3, I would make the handle argument keyword only, and put it at the end of the argument list. This would make actually passing arguments and such through catch much more natural. Update, 9 years later, for Python 3, I just meant switch args and handle, so you can specify arguments to the function without specifying handle. A minor convenience. This is helpful when using a defined function in the comprehension. Under the Python 2 version, we would have had to pass in handle before the egg.
You can use. This will simply skip elements that are 0.
No, there's not a better way. In a lot of cases you can use avoidance like Peter does. Your other option is to not use comprehensions. Up to you to decide whether that is more cumbersome or not.